Okay, good vach Shvatov. We are learning Lila Nishmas Mendel Mariam Bas Kalman Ruvin Her Neshama Shaban Aliyah. We are on the top of Ayin Ches Beis, right where the Gemara starts, and the Gemara asks a question based on something we saw in the Mishnah. The Mishnah described the measurement, the minimum measurement of a rope needed to carry in order to be chayiv on Shabbos. The amount of rope needed to carry is enough to make a handle for a basket. And the Gemara wants to understand why you need such a large piece. The handle of a basket is probably, I don't know, goes around the size of your hand, as opposed to a small amount of rope that can be used as a hook on a like a sifter or something of that nature. And that's why the Gemara asks, why is the rope so big that it's going to be used as a handle? Why not a smaller piece of rope that's used just like as a hook on a sifter, right? People basically think about like your mitts that you use when you take something out of the oven. So you have a little hook over there, that little piece of material that sticks out that you hang. So similarly, the sifter had a little hook. We saw that earlier. There's another material that we said that the only amount of material you need is to make that little hook, that little thing which you're going to use to then, the little bow. Is that the word? The little piece of material which you're then going to go and hang on a hook. So similarly, why don't we have the same thing for rope? Why isn't it not the amount that you need to make a little piece of material that's going to be hung on a sifter? And so the Gemara came out of Charik B'manav. Bimara, since the rope is coarse, right? They had coarse rope, and the rope is going to be coarse, and if it's so close to the material and it's going to be hanging next to it, it's going to actually cause it to, it's going to cause the wood to cut, to start to disintegrate because it's going to be cutting against it. La'avdi inshi, people therefore do not use rope to make a little loop on a for a sifter, and rather they use different materials, and that's why the smallest measurement of rope is not that small, rather it's a little larger, it's enough to make a handle. Tanar Bana, we have a brisa. Hutzin, palm fronds. Kidei lasses ozon l'sala kififa mitzvah, enough to make a handle for a basket made of palm bark. Siv, you take a palm bast, a cherem omrim. A cherem says kidei litzon al pi mashbech cut, enough to use palm bast, which was used as a sifter to place it on the mouth of a small funnel. L'sanan is a yain. So you make a small funnel, you want to strain wine. Wine, you know, in the processing process, you want to get the sediment out, and so you put a small piece of this on the bottom of the strainer in order to strain the wine. Revav, grease. Grease is like, we could just, one of the examples of grease would be like bad oil. Enough to smear the underside of a small wafer. Now, one of the ovens that they had back in the day, they didn't have like trays like we do. Rather, they would take a little grease, put it on the side of like your dough, and then place it on the wall of the oven. How does it stick? You don't put glue. So what you do is you place grease. Avikamish, how much is it? Kasela, as large as a sela coin. Vatanika grogeres. We have another brisa which says the size of the wafer is not a sela, not a coin, but rather a dried fig. And a sela coin and dried fig are actually one and the same. They're the same size. Mochin. How much cotton will a person have to take out in order to be chayiv chatas? What is significant? Kedei lasos kater katan, enough to take out a small ball. Akamish uro keegos, like a nut. Most of the times whenever the Gemara says a nut and doesn't explain what type of nut, we're referring to a walnut. So a small piece of cotton. Okay. And here we're going to get into a little bit more of discussion. Paper, how much paper are you chayav for? If you're carrying out plain paper, enough that you can write a tax collector's receipt on it. Okay, Tana, Brisa taught, Kama Kesher Moksin, how large is a tax collector's receipt? Shtei Osios Bechsav Yavani, the size of 2 letters written in Greek script. Greek script is larger than Hebrew script, and that's going to play a role in the next discussion. So the size of a piece of paper is enough that you can write 2 Greek letters. 2 Greek letters which are larger than Hebrew letters. Or we have another brisa which seems to say not like that. A person takes a blank paper. There's enough to write 2 letters, you're liable. Vim lav pater, and if there's less than 2 letters, you're exempt. Now, the brisa over there just says 2 letters, doesn't explain larger letters. If the brisa just says letters, you assume we're referring to Hebrew letters, and therefore, on the one hand, we just said above, we're referring to Greek letters, and here we're saying regular letters, meaning Hebrew letters, which are smaller. So which one is it? Is it the small letters or large letters? What size paper do you need? So Rav Shei says, no, there's no contradiction. What does it mean when it says 2 letters? Shtei osios shel kesher moksin, the 2 letters that are commonly used in tax collector's receipts, i.e. Greek letters. That's the easy answer. Say it's 2 letters, no contradiction. Rava has a different answer. Rava Amr Osios Didan. No, the second brisa that says 2 letters referring to 2 of our small letters. Uvesachiza. But a typical piece of paper needs to have a place where you're able to hold a piece of paper. In other words, if your entire piece of paper is covered with words, then how are you going to use it? Imagine reading notes off of a piece of paper with no margins. So you're holding it, you're covering the words. So you need a place with 2 letters, i.e. 2 small letters, Hebrew letters, and a little place to hold it. And that is the Hainu Kesher Moksin, which is the same size as tax collector's receipt. Okay? So what Rav is teaching us is very important. Rav is teaching us 2 things. Rav is saying that really, all that's needed is the size of 2 Hebrew letters, not 2 Greek letters. Just that happens to be that you need a place to hold it. When it comes to the tax collector's receipt and you have 2 Greek letters on it, actually they would place it down. Like if you ever give like your ID to someone, they want to inspect your ID, you take it out of your hand and they hold it. So the tax collector's receipt, there you don't need a beis achiza, you don't need a place for your thumb, because you give it to them, you put it down and they inspect it and you give it back. So you don't need a place to hold it. And therefore, it's when we in one brisa it says you need a piece of paper large enough to have 2 Greek letters. Another brisa says you need a piece of paper large enough for 2 letters. They were not talking about a tax collector's receipt, just a plain piece of paper, 2 letters enough to write a small word in Hebrew. But you also need, for it to be a functional piece of paper, you need it to have a place where you could hold it, like some form of, some place where you could hold it. Okay, so what comes out from Rava is telling us that really 2 small letters is enough, i.e. 2 Hebrew letters. It's just that technically you also need a place to hold it. Okay, let's keep that in mind because it's going to come up in the next discussion, because we're going to have a question on Rava based on this idea. Meisvei, we have another brisa which challenges Rava's view. Hamotzi Yar Machluk, person takes out erased paper, shtar paro, or paid loan documents. So we'll see soon, according to one opinion, a paid loan document, you're not chayav for carrying it out. Why? Because a paid loan document, there's nothing to do with that piece of paper. We'll see some dissenting views, but typically once a loan is paid, like you throw the document out because it's not going to be used for anything. So but if there's enough space, in addition to the document, there's a margin. And on that margin, that white space, is enough space to write 2 letters. Keep that terminology in mind. Shtei osios. Or it's large enough that you could wrap it around a small flask of balsam oil. Then you're not using it for writing. Okay, right. You're using it to cover something. So, but let's go back to the first case. If it has on the margin enough space to write 2 letters, chayiv you're chayiv and lav hatar. And if it's smaller margin, then you're exempt. Bishlam Rav Sheshis. This is not a question. According to Rav Sheshis, the first view, who Amar Mai Shtei Osios said, what is the meaning of 2 letters? Always 2 letters means Shtei Osios shel kesher most, and 2 letters commonly used in a tax collector's receipt. Shapir. So this price we just quoted over here. What it's saying is that if in the margin there's enough space to write 2 letters, i.e. the 2 large letters, great. According to Rav, said that 2 letters means 2 Hebrew letters, right? Dahanu kesher mosin, right? She said it's 2 letters, and normally you're going to have a place to hold it, which is the same size as a tax collector's receipt. Hacha beis achiza lo tzarich. But in our case, in this brisa, you're talking about a document. There's a document here, which is a document that's no longer needed, because it's a document that it had a loan, and the loan is already over. It's been paid, and therefore the document is meaningless. But there's that margin, and you have enough space for 2 letters, but according to Rava, 2 letters means 2 letters and a small space to hold it. But in this particular case, you don't need a place to hold it. Why? Because the whole document, you could hold the paper there. In other words, the 2 letters that you need to read, you could hold it by the document, because the document is one large beis achiza, one large handle for it to be held. And therefore the Gemara says kasha, there's a kasha. Again, let's just try to understand the question. The word shtei osios, according to Rava, means 2 letters, 2 small letters, and a place to hold it. In this particular case, you only need the space for 2 letters, because according to Rava, that's the only thing that's important. Rava normally says you also need a place to hold it, but in this particular case, you have a place to hold it. So when it says shtei osios, and shtei osios, 2 letters by definition means 2 small letters and a place to hold it, how does that fit with this brisa? Because you don't actually need that larger space to hold it. It should be pachos mishtei osios, less than the normal 2 letters. Okay, and the Gemara leaves off kasha without having an answer for Rava. Okay, next Gemara is going to be a little bit more complicated, but not so complicated. Okay, I shouldn't have said that. Okay, Tana Rabbanan, we have a brisa. Hamotzi kesher most, and person takes a tax collector's receipt. So let's assume that, let's say, the accountant writes a tax collector receipt saying this guy paid his taxes. Before he shows it to the tax collector and he carries this on Shabbos, he's chayiv. Why? Because this is a very important document. You're carrying something of substance, of meaning. According to the Tanna Kama, once you already showed it to the tax collector, this document serves no purpose, and therefore you're exempt. Even after showing it to the tax collector, you are chayiv. Why? Because there is still a need for it. Okay, so it's not so clear what they're arguing about. We're going to have a couple of different opinions. My Benai, what's the difference between them? Amar Abaye, Ikibanayo, Rehite Muchsa. According to Abaye, says that the issue is like this. Even after paying back your taxes, Rabbi Yehuda is suggesting that people still hold on to their tax receipts. Why? Because sometimes they get audited. I guess we'll say it's the equivalent of being audited. The tax collector will send out runners to go and check on some people. So therefore, Tanakam is saying, we're not worried about this, right? You pay your taxes, you throw out the stuff, right? Rabbi Yehuda is saying, no, you keep it, right? You're supposed to keep your taxes for 7 years, right? So Rabbi Yehuda says you hold on to it because sometimes there's going to be an audit. Rava says a similar answer. There's the chief tax collector, and then there's people under him. Even after you show it to the chief tax collector, Tanakam says, once you show it to the chief, you get rid of the documents. Rabbi Yehuda says, no, we're still afraid the people under him are going to check on it. And if you hold on to it, even in a case where there's only a single tax collector, there's no runners, there's no big one, small one, rather the issue is that a person's going to go travel somewhere else and they want to show, look, I'm an ethical person, I'm an honest person, I pay my taxes. And so you want to hold on to these. Let's say you're traveling from, I don't know, you're moving from the United States to Canada, you come to the country and say, look, I'm an honest person. That's why you want to hold on to the tax receipts. Okay, that is the different of views in terms of the machlokas between Rabbi Yehuda and the Rabbanan about a tax receipt after it's already been shown to the tax collector. Now we have a similar discussion. Tana Rabbanan, we have a brayso that says, a person takes out a loan document. Okay, so this document says, I lent you money. Okay, I lent you money. And a person goes ahead. So if I lend you money, what happens? You write me a document that says you owe me money, right? So I'm holding on to the document. If you have not paid me back yet, of course, if I carry this document outside, I'm chayiv, I'm liable, because this document is a very important document. Without it, I can't collect money from you. Mishaparo, however, once you, the borrower, pay me back, pater, then I am exempt for carrying it because this document has no function. Rabbi Yehuda disagrees again. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, af mishaparo chayiv, even after you paid it, then I'm still liable for carrying it out, because I still need it. What exactly is the debate over here? So we're going to see different opinions. Amar Rav Yosef, like 4 different opinions. Amar Rav Yosef, Asar Lasher Shtar Parua Ikemenayu. There is a debate over here. What they're arguing about is whether or not I'm allowed to hold on to this document, the loan document, after you pay me back. Rabbanan Savri Asar Lishos Shtar Parua. The Rabbanan holds that once you pay me back, I have to get rid of this document. Okay, so this document is not valuable to me because it's actually forbidden. It's contraband. I'm not allowed to have it, right? And therefore, for me to carry it now, I'm not chayiv. I'm not chayiv for Shabbos because this document is meaningless. Rabbi Yehuda holds that a person is allowed to hold on to a document that's paid back. Why? Why would I hold on to a document after you pay me back? Because I could still use it. Keep in mind, nowadays you have like tinfoil and saran wrap and things like that. They didn't have stuff back then. So if I had some food I wanted to cover, I would take an old document and I have a cover now, right? So I would still want to hold on to the documents. Tanakama says, I'm not allowed to do that because I could illegally go ahead and come back to you and say, hey, you never paid me back the money. Look, I have the document. And therefore, they hold. I have to get rid. Therefore, the document is meaningless because I can't hold on to it. It has no purpose for me. Whereas Yehuda says I'm allowed to hold on to it to use for storing things, etc. And therefore, it still has meaning for me, and therefore, I'm chayiv for carrying it. Answer number 2. Everyone agrees I'm not allowed to do so. It's forbidden for me to hold on to it. Here we're talking about the following case. Let's say, okay, one important halacha. If I come to you with my document saying you owe me money, and you say, prove it. Yeah, I see the document, but are those witnesses legitimate witnesses, right? A Jewish document needs 2 witnesses signing on it, okay? So you could come to me and say those witnesses are not legitimate, and I would have to go ahead and prove that they are legitimate signatures by bringing the actual witnesses to testify I signed on this, or to bring other people to say I recognize these signatures. That would what we call kiyum. That's how you verify the document, okay? So what in the following case, we're having a case where you agreed that you wrote it, but then you said, but I paid it back, right? You said, yes, I did write that that document is legitimate, but you paid back. So the argument is, when you admit that you wrote it, do I have to be mekayim it? Do I have to go and verify it? Or is you're admitting that it's good? Is that enough? Okay? So we're also, important caveat, we're talking about a case where the people who signed on it, they are from a foreign country and they're dead. There's no way of verifying these signatures, okay? So we have a case where there's no way of being mekayim these signatures, of verifying these signatures, but you, the borrower, admitted that you wrote it, just you're arguing, and I paid it back, right? So in that case, the Tanakama savar mod b'shtar sheksav tzarech l'kaimo. The Tanakama the first opinion says that when you admit that this is a legitimate shtar, and you say you paid it, for me to actually use it, I have to verify it. And in this case, we know that the witnesses are dead. We know that the alleged witnesses are dead. We know that no one ever met them. No one in our country knows them, whatever the scenario might be. And therefore, this document serves absolutely no purpose. And therefore, for me to carry it on Shabbos would not be a problem. Rabbi Yehuda holds that once the borrower admits to having written the document, then once you admit that you wrote the document, that you were part of this document, I don't have to verify it, and therefore this document is actually a very legitimate document. Now, there's a textual issue. My achlo pro mishaparo. What did the brisa mean when it said if he had not yet paid, or once he had paid? Ad sheyomer lo v'parati v'lo parati. What it really means is that until the borrower claims I paid or I did not repay. Okay, bottom line is it's a bit of a stretch in the text. Third answer, Rav Amar, everyone agrees that if you admit that you wrote the shtar, that you signed this that this document is a legitimate document, then we do need to bring witnesses to verify it. The hacha bekosvin shover kamifli. What we're arguing about over here, what the Tanakama and Rabbi Yehuda are arguing about, is about writing a receipt. Okay, Tanakama sever kosvin shover. Tanakama holds that we allow the lender to write a receipt. Okay, and therefore once the loan is paid, then, so once you pay the loan, then I write you a receipt, and therefore this document never has any value. Rabbi Yehuda Savar in Kosvin Shover, we do not write a receipt, and because of that, if I don't write a receipt, then this document does have value, and therefore carrying it would be chayav for carrying it on Shabbos. Rav Ashi gives the final answer. Rav Ashi Amar, Rav Ashi says the following. Rav Ashi says, we're not talking about me, the borrower carrying this document, it's you, we're not talking about me, the lender carrying the money, it's you, the borrower, carrying the money. Why is that? Why would you hold on to the star? The reason you do so is because let's say you need to borrow money from someone in the future, right? So you may go along. So like this. Tanakama says that once the loan is paid up, it's in your best interest for me to rip up this document. Why? Because I can hold on to this document and come back a few days later and say, hey, you still owe me the money. You're like, what? I paid it back already. Well, I have this document over here, right? So it's your best interest for me to rip this up. Rabbi Yehuda says, yeah, there is a value, but it's actually more valuable for you to hold on to it. Why? Because you could hold on to this document. Next time you need to borrow money, you could say, hey, look, I paid back money. That's why I have this document from my lender. And therefore, according to Rabbi Yehuda, you, the borrower, holding on to this document would actually be valuable, and therefore you carrying this document would make you chayav on Shabbos. Have a wonderful day.